Hello everyone, this is Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online multiplayer battle. So here I'm going to be piloting the Dwarves facing off against the Vampire Counts. So I'll do a brief overview of the army compositions here real quick just to give you guys a general layout of things. So in my front line I got a few groups of Longbeards. I believe I have three, so I have one, two, three, and then a group of Iron Breakers there on the outside. I like to have a group of Iron Breakers just because of the utility they bring. I like their ranged attack. I like the shock of it. Definitely a fan of having at least one group of them. In the back line here, here is my artillery, and what dwarf army is not complete without some guns and cannons and organ guns and all that fun stuff. So here I got a group of Thunders. I have another one here on this flank, and then I also have an organ gun. I felt that it was especially pertinent just to deal with vampire flying harass, coming in with the wizards, as you can see here, getting ready to do some fun stuff. So I'd like to have at least a group of those to deal with that. And then in the back, I got two groups of Slayers. I've become a big fan of these. Again, I feel the biggest issue with the Dwarves is their mobility, and I feel like Slayers are pretty mobile units, nice to have in the back line. They plug in, they deal with large units. Definitely a fan of them. So I got two groups there. And this game I decided to go really heavy on the Dwarf Lords. So I actually have a Thane up here. I have a Runesmith. And while I'm on that subject, Runesmiths are absolutely amazing for dealing with these Cairn Wraiths and, you know, all those different Banshee type units. They have the Ruin of, I forget what it is off the top of my head, but the Ruin of Wrath and Iron or something like that. And it's really, really strong. I'm a huge fan of that. Back here I got a Master Engineer. I feel of all the Dwarf Lord options, these are the least effective, but again, it's pretty fun, and the ranged buff that he provides also benefits your Thunderers and helps out a little bit with the organ guns. And then, of course, I have Ungrim Iron Fist back here leading the charge. So let's begin. So it looks like my opponent, he did a Vanguard spawn back here with these two Hex Wraiths. I actually didn't notice that at first, and they get a little bit of a jump on me. I was actually on my cell phone at the beginning of this game and did not notice that. So he comes in here, but again, his first play is here. It's just he flies his Lord around. I think he's going to, I assume he was going to do some sort of a Faded Buna or some sort of harass here on my flank, or perhaps a Spirit Leech on my commander, which made me a little uneasy. So I figured he might try and also land in these Thunders, do a little bit of harass, and take off. So I just kept these Slayers over here just to kind of support them. But again, I figured he was coming in. Also, these Hex Wraiths were coming in here in the back, so he was timing a two-pronged operation here. So I get these guys here. I turn the organ gun sideways here, and I also do the ballistics calibration buff. And these guys actually get a nice volley here. Do quite a bit of damage with the organ gun also. At the same time, he's coming in here in the flank, and again, I did not notice this. I was not paying attention. Definitely an issue here. So thankfully he didn't cast Faded Buna. He cast a far less effective spell over there. Still gets in there, tosses a few dwarfs around, but really, if you look at it, did not do any damage. So he gets in here with these guys. I get the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. There we go. So I get that off, and look how much damage that does. It's very, very cost effective there. So I get that off on those guys. I engage with the Slayers who are holding their own. Again, they trickle into the organ guns, but they didn't do quite enough damage to really disable the organ guns, thankfully. His Lord, he also took off, but he was able to heal, unfortunately, with I think it's Immortal Will or something like that. So again, the Hex Wraiths have to retreat. You can see they're already crumbling, and they've taken a beating. So I believe he's able to heal them with his Necromancer or something of the sort over there. So again, he brings his Lord back around. I think he's sweeping in for another run here. So again, I get these Thunderers here, and they get a decent volley, I think. I'm not sure. Sometimes they have trouble turning, so if they're flying circles around you, they have trouble turning at the same rate. So I get a nice volley here. So again, against vampires, I would always recommend getting some Thunderers, an organ gun. A lot of people tend to overdo it and get a bunch of grudge throwers and cannons, but again, getting, you know, an overkill of artillery can really cost you in terms of your infantry value and your ability to hold up against this really strong front line of crypt horrors and other unfun stuff here. So again, these guys are coming. I refocus the organ guns here. I believe I turn those around and start taking some shots here. So again, here I cast another Ruin of Wrath and Ruin and get that going on him. But he also uses the Invocation of Nehek to heal. So kind of counteracted that. But again, he lands his Wizard back here, his Vampire. And I get in there with the Slayers, and then also I have Ungrim Iron Fist there to fend them off. I also wanted to kind of keep them there to deal with these Hex Wraiths here. So again, he comes in here. Thankfully, Thunders are fairly tough. Despite them flying back, they're actually going to be okay. So I get in some Longbeards as well as some Slayers, and I'm doing pretty good despite the damage resistance that they have. I also pull in Ungrim here to hold this off. So my whole ideology was that I just kind of needed to stabilize here, you know, and make sure that I can hopefully keep that organ gun on line 1 and also keep a healthy amount of Thunders. So that's kind of where I'm at right here. These guys look like they healed up nicely with that Invocation of Nehek. So they are coming around now. And thankfully, you see what I'm saying? These Slayers are just, they're quick to respawn. A lot of other Dwarven units would have issues with that. But again, I get the rune on these guys and then get these Slayers in here. And look how fast they're going down. Already from their full ranks to 40. They're half their life. And I think he was planning on bringing those guys in together, but looks like she was a little late to the party. So I refocused the Slayers on her. And they actually do pretty good against generals, lords, that sort of thing. So again, I'm kind of trying to reform my ranks. I got some cannon fire going off here. Then I got my Ironbreakers here who throw some nice charges there. It's pretty cool seeing them all run through the flames. But look at the damage they took from the organ guns as well as those Ironbreakers charges. So the Ironbreakers continue to throw charges as the Longbeards engage with the Crypt Horrors here. And then he's got these Cairn Wraiths, which are just the bane of my existence. But thankfully I had these Slayers in the wings. Not necessarily a counter per se, but hey, they're not going to run away in terror, and they do pretty good against the Crypt Horrors, so definitely a fan of that. So here, battle's just developing throughout the area here. I got my back line here of Longbeards as well as Ungrim holding off these Hex Wraiths. And again, every time that rune is up, I'm just spamming it on either Hex Wraiths or Cairn Wraiths. You have to. That's the most cost-effective solution there. And again, these organ guns are still online. I got my Master Engineer actually fighting off this guy as well as my Runesmith. So they're doing pretty good. They have pretty high weapon damage themselves. So again, and then I bring these Longbeards over, pull them from the flank, and really pin down this Wizard. I believe I get here pretty soon here. So again, have a pretty tough battle here, but that Runesmith is constantly buffing their armor and attack damage. And these Ironbreakers are holding this outside flank and working on these Crypt Horrors. So that was going pretty well. So again, as you can see here, I keep targeting them. I believe I used the rune here to finish off the last of these guys. So these guys go down and I start to reposition these Thunders so they can start teeing off on these Crypt Horrors. And then these Longbeards, I go down to deal with these zombies. Probably not the best use of these Ironbreakers. I probably should have pushed them up to hill to really focus on these Crypt Horrors, but hey, whatever. You know, they're dealing with those zombies. Can't complain. So this front line really probably needed to be reinforced, but they got the rune of Oath and Steel, which buffs their armors, making them a little more resilient. And again, these Slayers, they're just handling business down here against these Cairn Wraiths. They're not gonna flee. And then at the top of the hill, I have Ungrim. Just been trying to get rid of this Wizard. I didn't want to, you know, get cheesed out by any magic. So again, I get a nice surround here and got the Slayers, and I believe these organ guns are still actually shooting at these Crypt Horrors. I'm not sure if they're just bugging out or what, but they were shooting a minute ago. And again, these Thunders back here are still doing their business and taking some nice pot shots. So I kind of cleaned up over there, and I pulled these Slayers down because I knew this flank was starting to crumble here in the middle, like I was saying earlier. So I pulled these Slayers in, and yeah, he's taking some shots. But I pull them in, and they do pretty good against the Crypt Horrors. I'm definitely a fan of that. These Thunders, I noticed the zombies to come around the flank, so I was trying to hopefully leave these zombies to fight these what little Slayers are left here and pull them back. But again, I just had to turn and fight at this point. And Thunders are very strong, especially with the stand your ground. Ungrim, who is nearby, and this Master Engineer is actually pretty strong in melee. So I'm a big fan of the Dwarf Lords. I think they're pretty sturdy. So here he pulls back his Banshee, which is actually surprisingly hard to deal with. Again, it has that resistance to physical, which is not fun for the Dwarves. But thankfully, I just spam that rune and maybe send Ungrim over there to deal with it. So, quick overview of the battle. As you can see, doing pretty strong over here in this flank, but this left side, just with all these Cairn Wraiths, is starting to crumble. But these Slayers, they're tough. They're still fighting. There's still 22 of them, and they'll fight to the death. Freaking love that unit. So I pull back these Thunders. I'm trying to get some separation here. I think these guys came back from route, so I think I bring them back up soon. But I'm trying to get this separation here so I can actually start shooting. So it looks like they pull out their guns. They're getting ready for business, which is definitely solid here. And these guys, I try to have them deal with the Banshee, but again, she just routes that really already damaged unit of not Ironbreakers, but Longbeards. Here, just kind of have a little cluster battle here. This Master Engineer defending his organ guns, but they've served their purpose. And then Ungrim here just smashing zombies, which doesn't get much cooler than that. So he's just getting in there doing his thing. And in the front line, the unsung hero of this battle, let me find him, is this Thane. He is still full health. He's been in the front line fighting against these crypt horrors and other monstrosities for the duration of this battle. He's just been tough. And you'll see in the final screen that, you know, he really held this front line with these troops and did quite a bit of work. So I was a big fan. And again, I was not sure if it was worth it per se, but at the end of the day, I think it paid off. Thankfully, I still also have this Ironbreaker group who held that flank over there against that zombies. I was able to bring them around, and they took no damage from that zombie unit. Look at them, full health, very tired. They've been fighting, but they took no damage. So again, I bring them around to reinforce this outside flank that was kind of collapsing, and they're going to make pretty short work of these crypt horrors and their critical binding, and they're even holding it pretty well against the Cairn Wraiths, who I had been continuing to spam with the Runesmith over here, so I'm just kind of keeping in the wings. So here, the last of the zombies are kind of crumbling, so now I'm able to charge my my Runesmith up into the front line and start buffing. You see the Rune of Oath and Steel. I got the Ballistics calibration, which isn't necessarily going to help unless they're throwing their satchel charges, but his line is starting to crumble here. He had that push around here, but thankfully with the Ironbreakers, with the Dwarf Lords, the Master Engineer, the Runesmith, all those guys were able to hold up. And again, this freaking Banshee has just been trolling me this entire fight. So finally, enough's enough, and I just took Ungrim and the Engineer, and I figure those two can, despite her you know, ability to deal physical damage, they'll eventually get in there. So I send the remainder of my dwarfs up to just kind of finish off this last pocket of resistance here. And again, I just figured my lords would deal with this Banshee. Pulled up a few of these Thunders, and again, surprisingly resilient. So they get back up and actually start shooting again at these crypt horrors over here, which is great. And I believe he has his lord over here who has done pretty well this fight. He lasted quite a long time, and again, maybe the one criticism is that he was fairly conservative with his lord. I did not see him in and about the fight very often, so perhaps, you know, just using him for his magical capacity, but I tend to like to get lords in there. But again, I play dwarves and greenskin, so so that was kind of it. So again, the last of the vampire army crumbled. It was definitely an intense fight, a lot of maneuvering and flanking and all that fun stuff. And again, I feel those Slayers, as you can see, they paid their dues. They were just awesome. So we'll go and do a quick breakdown here. So as you can see, Ungrim did pretty good for himself. Granted, you have to be careful in assessing these stats because he did have a lot of zombies, and again, that kind of pads a lot of the kills with some units. This Thane, though, he was in the front line fighting crypt horrors, all kinds of stuff. Just put in a lot of work, and this Master Engineer, he did his part. You know, he fought some of their lords, you know, helped defend that back line, and again, the Runesmith, though he only had 14 kills on paper, just the amount of value. He was the only, if I didn't have that Runesmith, I would have just lost to these Hex Wraiths and Cairn Wraiths. He really dealt with those cavalry and paid dividends in that, and not only buffing. Again, the Longbeard front line did pretty well. The Slayers, again, keep in mind, they were fighting a lot of these Hex Wraiths and cavalry, so their kills aren't going to be as substantial, but they did very well. And these Ironbreakers, can't say enough, just a solid unit. I always like to have at least one. They provide some nice variants. And again, these Thunderers did not perform to the best of their abilities, but they did get a lot of pot shots on his Crypt Horrors, wore them down quite a bit. Same with these Thunderers. And then this Organ Gun. What I liked about the Organ Gun is not only did it do quite a bit of damage to the Crypt Horrors, but at the same time, it forced him to dive in after it. So he kept pulling in his Lord and other mobile units after it, and at the same time, he was coming right into my ruin. He was having to fight through my Lords to do damage, and they lasted a long time. So again, really enjoyed the game, and good game to Commander Audit. I look forward to seeing you again on the ladder, and you'll be hearing from me more soon. Take care, guys, and thanks for watching.